Welcome into the Stokastic.com NASCAR Live Before Lock show is here to get you ready for tonight's NASCAR race, which lock will be just a little after 6:30 Eastern time. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. I'm back with you. It's been a couple weeks since I've had a chance to be here on the NASCAR Live Before Lock show. Of course, as always, I'm joined by Chris Pennell. We are sponsored by PrizePicks, which Chris has labeled out multiple plays over at PrizePicks. Talk about those later on in the show. Good afternoon, Chris. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing well. Glad to have you back. I've missed doing our weekly show, but should be a good one. We're starting off the NASCAR playoffs, and this is one of my favorite tracks, and I love the night race, so should be a good one tonight.
A lot better than a road race, though, you're saying?
Yes, much more entertaining, hopefully.
I know how much you really love road racing. I know it's your favorite cup of tea.
It's tough because I usually win a good chunk of money at road courses, but at the same time, I'm not having fun watching it. So it's a bit of I can't really decide if I like it or not.
Of course, if you got any questions, you can line those right up in the YouTube chat. Of course, you see it there on the sidebar, how we're going to go down this one. We'll talk about those top tier salaries and mid tier. Then we'll talk about those low tier. How low do you want to go? We'll talk a little bit about betting. And then, of course, we'll answer your questions there at the end of the show. But, Chris, I mean, the first thing when you talk about this race, before we even kind of get into dominators and PD plays, the fact is a little news coming out here over the last hour or so. We got a competition caution today, and there definitely is a driver this benefits big time.
Yeah, so I've been talking all weekend where I'm a little bit concerned about Daniel Suarez. Yes, he's starting in the very back, but he has to do a pass-through penalty, and he's more than likely going to go a lap down at a track like Darlington if we don't get any quick cautions. Good chance he's kind of stuck a lap down all day, battling for a top 20 finish, which was fine for cash games. But now, since we have a competition caution, we're going to get Suarez back in the lead lap no matter what, even if he does lose a lap early on. So that basically puts him into the category of being potentially the best play on the slate here. I gave him a 15th place projected finish. That's around 50 fantasy points. That's going to get the job done in 8K. So that changed a lot for Suarez. And for Joey Logano, I wasn't as high on him as my top dominator. I still thought he was certainly in play, but with the competition caution, just adding random variance for drivers that had to go down pit road, and obviously everyone's going to want new tires, it just makes me like Logano just a little bit less.
Mr. Moneybags in our chat saying go Knowles. Yeah, we got a big game tonight. You know, I've got the nieces and nephews with me, so hopefully I don't keep them up all night as I'm trying to be quiet as I'm watching the game here a little bit here. But you know, I mean, obviously when we're talking about this race, of course, we've got 367 laps. We've got nearly 257 dominator points on the board. Plain and simple, you know, break this one down. NASCAR DFS for dummies. You need dominators. The question really becomes is how many dominators do you want to get in?
Yeah, so it's quite the opposite we've had the past couple of weeks is we've had a road course and we've had a super speedway. We don't really care about dominators at those types of tracks, but like you said, tons of dominator points on the table. So I'm wanting at least 2 per lineup. If you have access to Fantasy Cruncher or any optimizer, I would set a dominator group that would consist of guys like Larson, Hamlin, Truex, Chastain, Busch, Logano. You could also throw in Tyler Reddick, Bell, and Byron. And I would set it to at least having 2 of those drivers per lineup because there's just too many laps to go around to not want to make them a focal point of your lineup tonight.
Are you trying to get the 3 though?
I certainly am getting to 3 in some. I'm currently doing my 3 max build as we talk through the slate here, just to see if I can swim myself in different directions. And every build I've done so far pretty much has a 3rd dominator in there.
You talk about being in the 3 max here every week. And I know that a lot of people that are tuning into us here on Stokastic.com, they may be single entry. They may be 3 max. They may be 20 max players. For a 3 max, what is your kind of general thought process?
So for a week like this, because it's going to change at each and every single track type, but what I mainly do is I figure out what dominators I want the most of, and I typically do 2 of them. I don't like to go all in on a driver in a 3 max contest. So for me currently, I picked Kyle Larson and Martin Truex as my favorite guys up top. So I'm kind of mixing and matching them in 2 out of my 3 lineups. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm not like 100% on a driver. I'm like mixing and matching the guys I like, but making sure they complement well. So I have some lineups with Larson and Martin Truex, but I want to try to grab a driver starting close to the front with them. The guy like Christopher Bell, Logano, or William Byron, if that makes sense.
Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. That does help us out a ton. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Stokastic right here on YouTube, be sure to do that. We have got you covered each and every day for all your daily fantasy sports needs. You know what's coming up here in 7 days from now, the start of the NFL season. We got all your NFL coverage all week long covered. Also, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you get that notification on YouTube when the show is live here on the channel. And of course, smash that thumbs up button. That really does help us out a ton as well. But let's get into the upper tier salaries. So this will be the drivers that are above $10,000 over on DraftKings. We'll start off with Kyle Larson. He's starting 7th today, 11,400 on DK, 13,000 over on FanDuel. Clearly someone that has got to be in our dominator pool. We've got him at about 18% chance of being a top 2 dominator here today. And I mean, we're talking almost 45% chance over our top fighter tool, or excuse me, our top driver tool. Sometimes I confuse sports. Come on. Yeah, Chris, it happens. I'm just trying not to say that A word. I try not to say that A word.
What's the A word we got?
I'm not. See, if you say it now, you're gonna get me to say it.
I'm sorry. I'll let it slide.
It literally happened about 2 shows ago. So don't worry. It definitely is going to happen there. But in terms of a top 6 driver percentage, I mean, he's approaching 45%. You mentioned just a second ago, he's a guy that you want to put in your dominator pool if you're using an optimizer such as Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah, we were talking about in the pre-show. I told you Kyle Larson straight up is my favorite dom on the slate. And as of right now, I believe he is my highest owned driver outside of Daniel Suarez. So I'm pretty much riding the Kyle Larson Express here. If you're looking at his Darlington finish early in the season, yes, he finished 36th, but he had the fastest car early on. He started in the front row with Joey Logano. He actually beat out Logano, led the laps early on, ended up spinning, then had an engine issue after he was driving his way back to the front of the pack. But excellent driver at Darlington. It's one of his best tracks. He's really good at riding around the wall. And it's similar tracks this year. Grades out very well for me. So starting in 7th, you get a little bit of PD cushion there. And I certainly expect him to be contending for the win at the end of the race.
Then you got the driver who's starting 11th. That is Denny Hamlin. He is 11,100 on DraftKings, 13,500 over on FanDuel. And if you're looking for a leverage spot, he would kind of fit that definition here, Chris.
Yeah, he's actually one of the guys I singled out in my 3-max build because he was getting similar ownership. And then when you're doing a 3-max, it's even harder to get to Hamlin because everyone's going to flock to Kyle Larson. Yeah. So in my non-Larson lineup, I put in Denny Hamlin and paired him with Kyle Busch, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But starting at 11th, he is really good at Darlington. If you're looking at the past few seasons here, he has a couple wins under his belt, the best average running position, 4 top 5s, and a good chunk of dominator points. And he's been very fast at these track types this year. Just a lot of them have been skewed from early on in the season where he was just struggling at just having clean races. But I don't see a reason why Hamlin can't be a good dominator play today. And you're getting him at a decent low ownership compared to some of these other guys.
Yeah, I mean, when I look over our ownership projections and you look at these drivers that are at the top of the salary list, I mean, that 9% ownership does stick out to me as saying, okay, like if I'm playing in a 20 max or a 150 max, I'm looking at that number going, ooh, man, I want to get there because the field's just not getting there. I mean, we talk about it no matter what sport in DFS, whether we're talking about NASCAR, we're talking about NFL, MLB, NBA, MMA, golf, whatever it is. We're trying to find is who is that player in the player pool that's just not getting ownership that, you know what, he could go out there. And when you look at it, we're talking almost a 37% chance that we have him as a top 6 driver today.
Yeah. And Denny Hamlin's had a ton of speed this year. It's just a matter of being able to finish races. But at the start of the playoffs, I assume he's going to come in hot here. He was fast in practice, top 5 long run speed starting at 11th. I mean, it's basically an ownership play for me, but in my non-Larson's lineups, I have a good chunk of Denny Hamlin today.
Now the next question is, what do we do with Chase Elliott, who's 10-7 on DK, 14,000 over there on FanDuel, the most expensive driver overall on the FanDuel side of the equation, but he's starting 23rd. So he's essentially a PD play.
Yeah, and I feel like we're paying a bit much for a guy that didn't really impress me too much in practice. I'm not saying he's a bad driver at Darlington. He finished 5th here early in the year. Also had a great race at Dover, which are some pretty similar tracks, but there was a lot of attrition at Darlington. You have to keep in mind that some of the finishes for these guys were a bit better than where I would actually expect them if this race stayed clean. And looking at Elliott's practice numbers, 14th in the 1 lap, 10th in the 5, then really dropped off in the long run where he was 26th in the 10 and 20th in the 15. I don't really see him being a top dominator today. Just not really the track I'd expected from him here. So starting in 23rd, I mean, I'd just rather get to Truex, who's about $1,000 cheaper, who I feel like is a similar play with even more upside and a faster car.
Look, I'm already seeing comments in the chat about Martin Truex Jr. We're going to get to him here in a little bit because clearly that is a driver that people are looking at here today. Tyler Reddick is 10,500 on DraftKings, 14,000 on FanDuel. He's starting fourth today, though.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to get this from Tyler Reddick. I'm not saying he's a bad play necessarily. It's just he's kind of getting priced out, in my opinion. I think DraftKings did overprice him. This is a good track type for him, really good riding around the wall. But I can get somebody like Christopher Bell and William Byron, who I feel like are very similar plays, for like $2,000 cheaper. It's just way easier for me to go that route. So I have a lot of love for some of these expensive drivers, and I have to exclude some of these guys. And Elliott and Reddick are the ones I'm getting the lowest to.
And Kyle Busch is starting one spot behind him in the fifth spot today. He's $300 cheaper than Tyler Reddick at 10-2 on DraftKings. $500 more expensive on the FanDuel side of the equation at 12-5.
Yeah, I really like Kyle Busch today. He's one of my favorite tournament plays. I don't think he's going to be as owned as he should. He showed some really good long run speeds in practice, third in the 20 lap, and then first in the 25 and 30. Not as many drivers ran those amount of laps in practice, but it was still nice to see from Kyle Busch. And the finishes for him, he finished 33rd at Darlington, but he was very fast early on. Just a bunch of issues happened in that race to a lot of good cars. But besides that, second at Charlotte, third at Kansas, seventh at Dover, fourth at Las Vegas. Starting in fifth, I mean, I prefer him over Joey Logano. You get a couple extra PD spots, and he should definitely be a force at the end of the race to be in contention to win.
Ross Chastain is starting 12th today. He's an even 10,000 on DraftKings, 11,000 on FanDuel. And we know your opinion about Trackhouse Racing this year.
Yes, and actually his teammate Daniel Suarez kind of got caught with something earlier today, which we'll talk about him later on. But Ross was fine. He made it through inspection, and 10,000 flat, 11K over on FanDuel. It just seems a bit too cheap for me. I know the finishes haven't been there. If you have rostered Ross like the past 2 months, the finishes have been awful, but he's had a super fast car. It's just a matter of staying clean, but had arguably the best car at Darlington early in the year. I would say it's him or Kyle Larson. Both were 1-2 in green flag speed, finished 30th, but fast at Dover, fast everywhere else, starting in 12th. This has been a good track for him. He was strong in practice. I don't see why he can't be a contender.
Joey Logano is on the pole here today, 9,800 over on DraftKings, 11,500 on FanDuel. I know I was watching the video that you did. You talked about, I mean, like, look, he went out in qualifying and he put together a great lap. But there were some other things that you kind of stuck there and you're like, I don't know if I kind of want to get there the way the field's getting there.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised of how well he qualified. Obviously, he found something in the track that worked in his favor, but I mean, he wasn't that strong in practice. 20th in the 5 lap, 17th, 15th, 12th in the 10, 15, 20 lap runs. I was just really surprised of how well he qualified. I don't think he's going to have the best car in this race. And he qualified in the pole for the first Darlington race. And even then, he still didn't have the best car. Yes, I know he dominated led a lot of laps and won the race, but you have to remember there was a lot of attrition in that race. Kyle Larson beat him on the jump of the race to start. He had a better car. Ross Chastain had a better car. Kyle Busch looked very fast. And you also have William Byron, who was dominating and was going to win the race at the end until Joey Logano wrecked him to grab the victory. So for me, I'm going to play some Joey Logano today, but he currently was not in my 3 max build. And with the competition caution being added, that's kind of what nuked him out of that. I was going to do one build with Joey Logano, but with the 25, with the competition caution on 20 and the lap 25, it just makes him a bit riskier, in my opinion.
Martin Truex Jr., we mentioned him a second ago. Let's get into him right here. He's starting 17th today, 9,500 on DraftKings, 10,500 over there on FanDuel. And you talk about, the ownership game here. He's going to be a popular play, not as popular as we're projecting Joey Logano to be, but still a popular play.
Yeah, I'd much rather get to Martin Truex, in my opinion, just a little bit cheaper, starting 16 spots further back, and pretty much had the best car in practice. It was him and Kyle Larson with the best long-run cars. Their fall-off wasn't as drastic as some of the other guys. First in the 10 and 15 lap runs, and second only to Kyle Larson in the 20 lap. And like I said, it's really just getting that extra place differential, because if Logano loses the lead early on in stage 1, I'd be much happier having Martin Truex Jr. in my lineups, because he can make up some of those PD spots. He's also excellent at Darlington, averaging the second most DraftKings points per race, the best drive rating, and a good chunk of lap sled as well. So I don't really see a reason not to like him here. I know it feels like every time Truex is a popular play in a good spot, he seems to fail, but I'm going to have to go with the numbers here and just suggest him quite heavily tonight.
The final driver here in the upper tier is Ryan Blaney, 9,200 on DraftKings, 9,500 over there on FanDuel. He qualified 9th here today, and we got him at about an 8% chance to be a top 2 dominator.
Yeah, I'll just keep it short and sweet on Ryan Blaney. I know I like him. He's my favorite driver, but not today. I am not playing Blaney. If he wins, so be it. I can't see it happening. He had a fringe top 10 car practice. This is one of his worst tracks. I'm just not a fan.
I get you. I get you there. I mean, it's understandable today, especially I think when we're talking about some of these other guys, in the 9K range and above of we're trying to get to because of that dominator position. Of course, this is the Stokastic.com NASCAR Live 4 Lock Show. We're getting you right here for today's NASCAR race. And of course, right now is a great time to sign up for a Stokastic Plus pass. If you've been thinking about signing up for a pass, right now is a great time because, of course, we got NASCAR here today. We got NFL coverage for you all week long. Week 1 starting here on Thursday night. Of course, we got you covered on the college football side of the equation. We got you covered MMA and so much more. And for new users right now, you can get 50% off your first week of any weekly package. All you got to do is use that promo code NASCAR LBL, all word, all caps, NASCAR LBL for 50% off your first week of any weekly package, whether you want NASCAR or maybe you want to do the whole site. Right now is a great time to take advantage of it. All these tools that you're hearing me talk about, that for NASCAR, talking about that top driver tool that we have. It is a tool that I use. It's how I develop lineups. When I'm looking at a race where I need dominators, I'm going to that dominator and figuring out who I want to put in my crunches. So it's a great tool to have. If you've been thinking about right now, great time to try it out. Get 50% off your first week of any weekly package. All you got to do is use that promo code NASCAR LBL, or you click the link in the video description below. And of course, when you hit that link, that lets the people here at Stokastic know you heard it from here on the NASCAR LBL show. As that helps us out. It helps out a lot. It lets everyone know exactly what we're doing over here. So be sure to take advantage of those deals. We got a ton of NFL coverage coming up here this week to get you ready for week 1 of the NFL season. Now let's get over to the mid-tier salary. So this will be the drivers in the 8K and all the way down to the 6K range. So we got William Byron. He is starting third here today, 8,900 on DraftKings, 9,000 over there on FanDuel. And he's popular today.
Yeah, for a good reason. He's really cheap and was obviously very good at Darlington early in the year, was going to win that race or finish second. I thought Joey could have passed him clean, but he decided to put him into the wall. Ended up finishing around 13th place, I believe. But Darlington's been a pretty good track for William Byron, showed a lot of speed in practice. And if Byron's looking to get some revenge, he's going to be starting the race right behind Logano. So if he wants to give him a nice little bump, he could grab the lead early on.
Next up, you got Christopher Bell, who's starting here second here today, $8,700 over on DraftKings, 10,000 on FanDuel. So if you're looking to save some money on a potential dominator today, man, Christopher Bell sticks out to you.
Yeah, I honestly think William Byron and Christopher Bell are like pretty much the same exact plays on both sites. I have even exposure on both of them on both sites today, a little bit heavier over on the FanDuel side of things because the dominator points aren't as important. And I don't think they're going to be as likely to dominate over guys like Kyle Larson and stuff today, but I think they can be top 5 contenders. Both were very fast in practice. So I don't see a reason not to like Bell. He's been very consistent at these track types this year, and he finished top 6 at Darlington early in the season.
When you talk about PE plays, one of the drivers that does kind of stick out to me a little bit today is Kevin Harvick. He's starting 18th, 8,500 on DraftKings, 8,800 over on FanDuel. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people thinking the same way I'm thinking.
Yeah, I really like Kevin Harvick today. When Daniel Suarez was going to have the passer penalty without the competition caution, I was like putting almost all my exposure over to Harvick. Now with that news, it's kind of evened out a little bit, but I still have a lot of Harvick today. I know practice wasn't super impressive for him, but it never really is for Harvick. He's just not a great practicer or qualifier, but he changes that during the race. And this is a great track for him. I mean, average finish of 3.3, the second best running position, the second best drive rating, 2 wins, 5 top 5s. And I think it's like 10 or 11 top 10s in a row for him at this track. He finished 4th here early in the season. So I don't see a reason not to like Harvick. I like him in cash-in tournaments.
Alex Bowman is 8,200 over on DraftKings, 8,500 over on FanDuel. He starts 2 spots ahead of Kevin Harvick in the 16th position.
Yeah, Bowman finished 29th here early in the year, but I'm going to give him a pass there because, again, there was just a lot of bad issues for some good cars. But besides that, at similar tracks, I mean, 5th at Dover, 10th at Charlotte, 9th at Kansas, 1 at Vegas. It wasn't the best car at Vegas, but still got a win under his belt. Starting in 16th, I mean, he's going to be much lower owned than guys like Harvick and Suarez. So if you're looking for that pivot in tournaments, I don't mind Bowman today. He showed top 10 speed in practice.
You mentioned about Daniel Suarez there at the beginning of the show and how this competition caution really is going to be beneficial for him today. Of course, he is starting dead last, 8,000 over on DraftKings, 8,200 on FanDuel. And I got to imagine there's some people sitting here watching us here today that are going, man, how is this not a smash play?
I'd ask the same question because I think it definitely is a smash play here. He's top 15 car in practice, P16 in the 1 lap, and P13 in the 5, 10, and 15 lap runs. Starting in 36, he's not going to lose spots. The only concern was that he was going to be down a lap for the majority of the race, but with the competition caution, he's going to be fine. He'll be in the lead lap, and I imagine he's going to be battling for a top 15. And if he does that, we're talking like 50-ish DraftKings points at 8K, and that's without any dominator points. So his floor is very safe.
Yeah. Then you got Chase Briscoe. He's 7,900 on DraftKings, 7,500 over on FanDuel. He is starting 19th, and this is a driver who is not getting much ownership.
Yeah, he doesn't have any ownership for me personally. I maybe 1 or 2% Chase Briscoe in 150 max, but 30th in the 5 lap in practice, 24th in the 1 lap. The problem is he is by so many good plays because I don't think I disliked any of the 8K drivers. So I just have all my exposure there. And the way roster construction works out, it's not really allowing me to get to too many of the 7K guys anyway. So it's pretty much a pass on Briscoe.
Then you got Austin Dillon, who's starting 13th today. He is 7,800 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel.
Yeah, Austin Dillon got a win under his belt last week at Daytona, just basically survived the mass chaos that we had, but super slow in practice. Darlington's not a terrible track for him, but for where he's starting, I think there's better upside plays.
Then you got Austin Cindric, who is starting 6th here today, 7,600 on DK, 7,800 on FanDuel.
So Cindric was really good in practice, first in the 1 and 5 lap runs, and then third in the 10 lap and 5th in the 15 lap. The problem is he's just starting so high in 6. I imagine he's going to fade during this race. And I can pretty much easily name 6 drivers I think will finish above Austin Cindric. So I have a little bit in tournaments, but it's nothing drastic.
Michael McDowell starting 10th today, 7,500 on DraftKings, 7,000 on FanDuel. And just going to throw this out there. Our projected ownership on Michael McDowell today, 1%.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's just really hard to get to McDowell at that price point for where he's starting, the speed he showed in practice. And if you're looking at his numbers at Darlington, we're talking about a guy that average running position around 25th place, but he did finish 7th here early in the year. It's just, I know we say this a lot and Michael McDowell gets the job done, but I just don't see how he's going to improve upon this position. I think he fades out, probably going to battle for a top 15, but that's not going to be enough to get the job done.
Bubba Wallace is starting 8th today, 7,300 on DK, 6,800 over there on FanDuel. And we got him at a 23% chance to be a top 6 driver today.
Yeah, I think Bubba's kind of sneaky. He shows some good long run speed in practice, 4th in the 20 lap, 3rd in the 25 lap, and then 2nd in the 30, only behind not really his teammate Kyle Busch, but a fellow Toyota driver. So I think Bubba's in a fine spot here. He's now in the Kurt Busch car. In the 45, him and Ty Gibbs did switch cars because of owners' points for the playoffs. But I think Bubba's a fine play, not someone I'm going to go crazy on, but starting in 8th could be a sneaky top 7, hold his position kind of guy.
Eric Jones starting 15th today at 7,200 on DK, 8,000 over there on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like Jones a lot in tournaments. He has a win at Darlington in the past. It wasn't better equipment with JGR, but still knows his way around the track, was 3rd in the 1 lap in practice, 6th in the 5 lap. I don't think a ton of people are going to get there just because of the price point. And once we get into the 6K range, there's a lot of other good PD plays here. So I'm liking Jones a lot in tournaments. It's a nice pivot.
Before we get in that 6K range, we got Ty Gibbs, 7,100 on DK, 6,500 over on FanDuel. He's starting 21st, but getting very low ownership.
Yeah, Ty Gibbs didn't really blow it up in practice. I mean, 33rd in the 1 lap, 29th in the 5 lap. He's obviously in the Bubba Wallace car now in the 23. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. I assume they're going to have very similar speed. But it looks like Bubba has a lot faster this weekend. So I'm not really a fan of Gibbs starting in 21st. I think I have like 10% Gibbs, but it's nothing drastic.
Chris Buescher starting 27th today. He is 6,900 on DraftKings, 6,200 over on FanDuel, and he's getting a little more ownership than Ty Gibbs is, but not much.
Yeah, I think Buescher's a fine play. When I was building some lineups, he did land in one of my 3-max builds. I actually think he's fine for cash games because of where he's starting in 27th. I know he didn't light it up in practice, was actually very slow, but Darlington's not a bad track for him. He's got a couple top 10s under his belt, finished 16th here early in the season, then 8th at Dover, which are tracks that I'm looking at for Buescher, or anybody in general this weekend. So starting in 27 should battle for a top 20, which is fine enough at his price point.
Brad Keselowski is starting 25th today at 6,700 on DK, 6,000 over there on FanDuel.
So back when he had better equipment, Darlington was a pretty good track for Brad Keselowski. Obviously, you can't expect those kind of numbers now and with Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, his teammate Chris Buescher, but showed a lot more speed than his teammate, 18th in the 1 lap, 19th in the 5 lap, and some better long run speeds, although not as many drivers ran that. But I think Keselowski's fine. Pretty much a similar play to Buescher. I have equal exposure on both.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting 20th today, 6,500 on DraftKings, 5,800 over on FanDuel, and getting sub 20% ownership here.
Yeah, I like him a lot this weekend, which sounds scary to say, but I think I know it's never going to end well, but I'll try to make a case for him here. So he was 6th in the 1 lap in practice, top 20 in the 5 lap. And if you're looking at his finishes at similar tracks this year, it's honestly great for his price point. 7th at Charlotte, 8th at Kansas, 8th at Darlington, 2nd at Dover, and then 10th at Auto Club early in the season. Like, he's been actually really good. That's, I believe, 5 top 10 finishes in the 6-race sample size that I am looking at. I'm not expecting a top 10, but I definitely wouldn't be against it. Should be a top 15 contender. And I think he's a great pivot off of guys like Buescher and Keselowski, just for starting higher.
And the reality is we're starting to get to this point. It's like, okay, who in that sub 7K range that you feel comfortable with?
Right. And I think Stenhouse is the best chance of all these drivers in this 6K range that can offer you a top 10, which is definitely appealing for tournaments.
The driver starting 2 spots behind Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is Eric Amarola, who is $100 cheaper, 6,400 on DK, and $300 cheaper on FanDuel, 5,500.
Yeah, I do like him quite a bit too. He made one of my 3 max builds, as did Ricky Stenhouse. He was 13th in the 1 lap in practice, 16th in the 5 lap, finished 11th at Darlington earlier in the season, and had a good race at Auto Club as well, where he finished 6th, but not a bad track for him. Couple top 10s, typically always in the top 15, top 20. So you don't need much here at his price point.
Justin Haley starting 14th today, 6,200 on DK, 5,200 on FanDuel. And he's getting 1% more than Michael McDowell is. So he's getting 2% ownership.
It's hard. It's hard to get there. I think he's got at least a halfway decent shot of being able to stay on the lead lap longer than others with his track position. So I'm overweight on that. I'm around 7 to 9% just because of that. It wasn't too hard to get to, but wasn't impressive in practice. He did finish 3rd at Darlington early in the year, but that's not on straight up speed. He just kind of got lucky of avoiding wrecks. 11th at Dover, though. He's a fine low owned dart play. I would rather play Justin Haley than I would Michael McDowell at the low ownership. So I think he's a fine pivot off some of the chalkier 6K options.
And then the final driver in this tier will be Landon Castle at 6,100 over on DK. The bare minimum 2,500 on FanDuel, though.
I'm not sure what DraftKings is doing with the pricing here. Maybe they just looked at last week where he scored 70 points because it's Daytona, but that has no correlation to this weekend. He's going to be slow. He's in a back marker car, 35th in practice. He's starting 26. I don't see how you could click on Castle's name.
Of course, this is the Stokastic.com NASCAR Live for Lock Show as we're breaking down tonight's NASCAR slate. And we are sponsored by PrizePicks. Of course, if you've not signed up PrizePicks, sign up right now, and they will match your first deposit up to $100 when you use that promo code AWESOMO. So very simple. You deposit $100, they give you an additional $100. If you only want to throw $20 in an account, they'll give you additional $20. So you get that by using that promo code AWESOMO for that instant first match deposit of up to $100. And my guy Chris here, man, you like a lot over on PrizePicks today.
Oh, I'm looking at the PrizePicks board now. Every single prop I sent you has changed drastically in a different direction. So I got good value, but people listening right now are going to get quite the value.
No, it's something we talk about with PrizePicks all the time of, when it's earlier on the week, you find a prop that you really like. Like we can go down here. 4 of the 5 props you sent me were all fantasy score related. We'll start at the top. Ross Chastain, since I don't have PrizePicks in front of me, the number you sent me was 44.5.
Yeah, he's currently sitting at 46.5, which still seems low. Like I said earlier with Ross, arguably had the best car at Darlington earlier in the season, was fast in practice, starting in 12th. If he just mixes in some dominator points with some fast laps and contends for a top 8, top 6, I think he can get the job done. The number seems a bit low.
Martin Truex Jr., the number was 46.5.
We're now at 50.5. So it's definitely, but I mean, as I always say with PrizePicks, when at these tracks that have a lot of dominator points available, PrizePicks is not great at adjusting that. They don't put enough dominator points out there. Like when you factor in what the projected finishes would be for Vegas and the amount of dominator points out there, they're leaving a lot of points on the table. So this is when you can really take advantage of this really early on when they come out. But for Truex, I mean, everybody likes him for DFS for good reason today, starting in 17th. Seems to have a really fast car, really good at transitioning from day to night. That 46.5 number was way too low, 50.5. You're still pushing it, but I still think you can get 60 plus points tonight.
Kyle Larson, a guy that you like on DFS today, but I know you also liked his number there on PrizePicks.
Yeah, for Kyle Larson today, I'm assuming he's going to be the top dominator. This is a great track for him. He was the favorite when it opened up. Then he went after practice and qualifying. I think he went to like plus 1,200. Now he's down to plus 700 last time I looked. So trending in a positive direction there. But 51.5 points now currently. If he gets up front and dominates, he's going to blow that number out of the water. So I feel pretty comfortable about that.
Eric Jones, fantasy score 29.5 was that number he initially sent me.
Yeah, now we're up to 33.5. I feel pretty good about this line value I got. Unfortunately, it just happened to change so quickly, but I like Jones a lot today in tournaments. Like I said, he is a former winner here. He's had some speed at the high tower venues this year, 4th in average green flag speed, basically banking on a top 10 finish from Jones, which I think is certainly possible.
And if we go over to the laps led category, a guy that we are looking at as a dominator today, and that is Christopher Bell. That number was 26.5. It's now 23.5.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I don't like Christopher Bell today, but I don't really see him dominating over Logano early on. I also think Byron can beat him out at the jump, and then you have Larson, Kyle Busch, all those big names behind him. So I thought the number was just a little bit too high. I would not be surprised if this is the one that bites me in this 5-man flex play, but I still think the under was a good play.
So now we go to the how low do you want to go when we look at DraftKings and FanDuel. So we're the under 6K range here. So there are some drivers that are pretty much getting next to nothing ownership. Daniel Hemrick, JJ Yeley, BJ McLeod, Cody Ware apparently doesn't like our guy Phil on Twitter. But you know, let's talk about. So let's first all talk about Daniel Hemrick. He's 5,900 on DK, 3,500 over on FanDuel, starting 24th.
He's just starting a bit too high for me. I think this 5K range really isn't that bad as far as just cheap plays that offer a lot of PD upside because they allow us to get in those multiple dominators up top. But for Hemrick, for me, I mean, 25th place car in practice, 22nd in the 5-lap. Not expecting much here. Not a guy I have a ton of ownership to.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all these drivers outside of Hemrick, they're all starting 28th or worst.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're looking for a sour elite that, let's just say maybe you want to get in 3 dominators into your lineup, this is where you could potentially get that 3rd dominator in. If you want to go down here, you got Harrison Burton, who's starting 28th, 5,700 on DraftKings, 4,500 on FanDuel, and he's getting around 7% of projected ownership.
Yeah, Burton's a pretty solid play. I mean, starting in 28th, he was 11th in practice, fell off in the 5-lap. But I mean, again, all these, you don't need much out of these guys. If they avoid attrition, they stay clean during this race, I would expect them to be a lap down. I don't really think they're going to be on the lead lap, but even then, they should contend for a top 25.
Did we mention Ty Dillon?
We didn't. I thought you were just upset with him or something.
No, I literally, as I'm scrolling down the sheet on the iPad, I just apparently I just said screw Ty Dillon. Apparently that's what I did here, but no, let's talk Ty Dillon here. 5,800 on DK, 3,000 on FanDuel, starting 29th.
Yeah, I like Ty Dillon today. I mean, he was 20th in the 1-lap in practice, starting in 29th, pretty much the same play as Harrison Burton, but finish-wise, Ty Dillon's not been bad this year. I mean, 13th at Charlotte, 20th at Kansas, 12th at Darlington, 27th at Dover wasn't great, but then 20th and 17th. Like, again, just avoid wrecks, finish the race, and I'll be happy. That's it.
Cole Custer, 5,500 on DK, 5,000 on FanDuel, starting 30th, and he is the most popular play when we're talking about this salary range.
Yeah, that reflects on my own personal opinion. I think he is the best cheap driver this weekend. It's just there's no reason Landon Castle should be more expensive than Cole Custer this weekend. I know Custer's not the greatest driver. I hate rostering Custer, but he's at least has top 20 upside. He was fast in the 1-lap in practice, starting in 30th. He has a legit chance to gain 10 spots at a dirt cheap price point.
Then you got Corey LaJoie, 5,400 DK, 3,000 on FanDuel. He's starting 34th today.
I don't really want to get the core of the joy. I just expect him to be really slow. But the thing is, I mean, he's starting two spots from the very back. So if he just, again, avoid attrition, he'll be fine. But he's not nearly as good of a play as Custer, Burton, or Ty Dillon, in my opinion.
Todd Gillen getting approximately 17% ownership here today at 5,300 on DK, 4,000 on FanDuel. He's starting 31st.
Yeah, really slow in practice, 35th in the 1 lap, 34th in the 5 lap. I am not expecting too much out of Gillen, but if he's a last piece fit to make things work, I don't mind it. He finished 15th here early in the year. And honestly, he's been a top 25 contender at some of these intermediate-ish tracks. So I don't hate him. I don't love it, but it's just, if he fits, he fits.
Then we just get into just our favorite plays every week. Are we unchecking JJ, BJ, and Cody?
We are. Ware finished 19th at Darlington early in the season, but there was a lot of attrition in that race. As long as that doesn't happen again, we're not going to see these guys in the optimal. I was looking at the optimal lineup so far this season. Outside of super speedways, they just don't pop up in the optimal. They don't score enough points.
Yeah. And talking, I mean, you briefly mentioned the betting odds over here. I was just kind of pulling up the odds here for the updated. In terms of it, I guess a lot of people are going to probably be looking at Martin Truex Jr. just based on the chat.
Yeah, certainly so. I think I had the top 10 odds up.
Right. As I literally pulled up, that was top 10 to win the race. Martin Truex Jr., 15-1.
Yeah, and I don't mind that. I mean, he's not going to be up front to start the race, but as the race progresses, we transition to nighttime, which is usually when Martin Truex is his best. I expect him to be inching towards the front. His pick through's been great this year. It's been able to help him gain or maintain position. So I know he's not in the playoffs, but he said himself he's hunting for wins, and I can certainly see that happening.
Yeah. Looking at some other numbers here, you mentioned about Kyle Larson, plus 700 to win this race. We kind of briefly mentioned about Denny Hamlin a little bit earlier, plus 900 to win this race. Any other things on the to win this race on the betting side that have stuck out to you?
So the only guys Larson would be obviously the guy I want to get to. I think plus 700 is still actually not a bad number. I think he should be the favorite to win this race. I know DraftKings, whoever gets the poll, they juice those odds up quite a bit, but I still like Larson at that number. I like Hamlin. I think Byron, Truex, and Chastain are the guys other guys I'd get to at longer odds. But outside of Truex, besides Kevin Harvick, I don't see a long shot winning this race.
Of course, if you got any questions, you hit those up in chat. I'm just kind of scrolling my way to the top of the chat to get to all these questions before we get out of here on this edition of the Stokastic.com NASCAR Live for Lock Show. Yeah, I almost said that A word. Almost said that A word. Came close. Let me just got a notification about a question we got over in Discord. Of course, I always want to show our subscribers love over there that are asking the questions in here. So let me scroll over here to our NASCAR channel here and says, can Chris explain why the competition caution hurts Logano? Better to jump on Truex for a DraftKings GPP.
Well, it just hurts Logano in the sense that it adds more variables to the fact that Logano could lose the lead early on. Because if it was no competition caution and he gets a really good start to the race and just kind of checks out, a good chance it leads a good chunk of stage one. But now with everyone coming down pit road, it just adds random variables to maybe he gets a pit penalty. Maybe someone else has a really good pit stop. I'm expecting Logano to keep the lead after that. But again, that just adds another restart to where maybe he spins the tires or doesn't have a great of a restart. So it just adds, more randomness to Logano's outcome.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Zach, he had the very first question here in the chat. He says, who's the best driver between 11K and 9K? A lot of great options to choose from.
Well, see, all the best drivers in NASCAR here. I would have to say Kyle Larson, though, just specifically for today's slate. Great at Darlington, and numbers check out for me.
Yeah. Let's see here. Tourney Core. It's kind of to me, like when I think of that question, my first thing is, okay, I want to try to get at least 2 dominators in my lineup. So that's like kind of where it starts. And that's where I'm more using a fancy cruncher of putting in together a group and saying, hey, give me 2 to 3 of these drivers, or at least 2 of these drivers. So I am getting to that dominator perspective. But then I start looking at PD plays, I can understand why someone may want to go Chase Elliott, but man, I'll spend a ton of money for that PD play. But that's where I think, Daniel Suarez at 8,000, Kevin Harvick to me are other ones that stick out to me.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my own exposures in a 150 max setting, and my 5 highest right now are Suarez, Larson, Truex, Harvick, Chastain. I know those guys aren't really low owned or anything for tournaments, but they're still the ones I'm getting to the most of. For the highest guys that have lower ownership, at least projected, Ricky Stenhouse, Eric Jones, and Denny Hamlin would be guys I get to in tournaments as well.
Which drivers are you getting the most exposure to on DraftKings?
Oh, well, I guess it's basically what we said there, where Suarez, Larson, and Truex are the one, kind of the core 3.
Like Stan mentions, he goes, are Harvick and Suarez locks? I don't know if I would say that locks in terms of tourneys, just because I'm trying to, really differentiate myself, like, using the analogy of, hey, let's play against the field, not against yourself. Cash, though, I think that's a different answer.
Yeah, in cash games, you're locking in Suarez, and I mean, you can make a case for not locking Harvick, but in my opinion, I would want to get Harvick in my cash game build. But in tournaments, I never say anybody's a lock, because if you want to go under on Suarez and go heavier on guys like Bowman and Harvick at lower ownership, I am fine with that. So it really just depends on what kind of setting you're in.
Logan over in our Discord chat, he says, I really like Denny Hamlin, especially at his ownership and top 4 percentage. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, for good reason. Denny Hamlin, he's a little bit harder to get to because of the price point, but in my non-Larson lineups, I'm getting quite a bit of Denny Hamlin just because of that. I singled him out in a 3 max build just because I don't think he's going to get enough love, especially in those hand build contests where it's just harder to get to a guy like Denny Hamlin, but he was fast in practice. This is one of his better tracks. I don't see a reason why he can't be a contender starting 11th.
Demetrius Mack asks, he goes, what are some randomness and exposure? Typically for me, and this is just kind of a general game theory for me, it's 2 uniques per lineup. And usually, 20% randomness is kind of where I go. Sometimes I might go a little less.
Yeah, for me, I'm typically someone that does 30% randomness. Now, if it's Daytona, I actually did 100% randomness last week. So it's when I get a little bit crazy because, I mean, it's just hard to project a race like that. Road courses, I can kind of sway from 30 to 40, but for a track like this, I'm at 30%, and my highest exposure right now is 60%. That's Suarez.
800 left on DraftKings. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. I did a crunch earlier using some projections and looked and see what the least or the most money on the table was, and it was at 1,400. And I probably wouldn't want to do much more than that, but 800 is fine.
Lewis here with a single entry question, which I'm guessing is DraftKings. Logano or Bell?
I would go the Bell route so I can save some money and get a better secondary player.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you there. Any love for Kyle today? Have a feeling he will be winning. I'm guessing he's mentioned Kyle Busch.
Yeah, because Larson's not as sneaky. I'm going to assume that's Kyle Busch there. So, I like Busch. He's in my Hamlin lineup in the 3 max. I mean, the numbers check out for me. Good long run car, good odds to win the race. Really good at these track types this year. And he had a fast car early on in the season at Darlington. Just happened to have an issue where he finished poorly. But yeah, he's a fine tournament play.
What paint scheme is Truex in today?
Let me check my sheet.
Baldy said, he goes, is Truex in the auto owners paint scheme? If so, watch out.
Well, my entry list says Bass Pro. I can't remember what it was when I was watching, but it says Bass Pro Shop. So no auto owners this week.
Yeah. How do we feel about William Byron?
Byron's a good tournament play. I mean, starting in 3rd, he could be a sneaky dominator at the beginning of the race, and he's been good at Darlington in the past, and the practice speeds look very strong.
Sean says, he goes, I have 4 teams in the 20 max on DK and don't have a single driver in the 7,000 range.
We were talking about it earlier where outside of Eric Jones, I really don't like that 7K range. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Top 2 lower owned dominator pivots.
Well,
Denny Hamlin was one that kind of stuck out to me as a potential dominator is getting there. That's we have him under 10%.
Yeah, I would say JGR guys, Hamlin and Kyle Busch up top.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just kind of looking at our top 2 percentage over there. Trying to find drivers that are say under 15%. I mean, if you always kind of like to joke about Ross Chastain and cheating. I mean, he's kind of he would be a low owned dominator.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the top drivers still. I was thinking Chastain was a little bit higher, but is he coming in under 15%?
Yeah, he's like Chastain he's at 9%.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if that's going to be the case, I definitely want to be overweight. I have over 30% Chastain today, so I'm definitely way over that.
Yeah, that's one of those things of when you have our tools over Stokastic.com. One of the things that, and when I'm looking at that top driver tool, I'm comparing ownership to a top 6 percentage and saying, okay, is there some type of levers I could potentially get there? Those are things to use. Ownership obviously is so huge in how I'm developing my lineups. Like someone mentioned, I mean, Tyler Reddick, do you want to get there as a dominator?
It's appealing because he's going to be lower owned today. It looks like around 10-15%. It's just he's so expensive, and it didn't look like he had the absolute fastest car in practice. So it's tough to pay that premium of a price point when I can get to a Kyle Busch, who I trust a lot more. So I'm pretty low on Tyler Reddick, but I understand the appeal as a low end play.
Of course, do want you to check out all the fantasy football coverage we have over here at Stokastic.com as fantasy football season here. Well, it's really here for me because I have a draft in less than 2 hours from now. So it really is here for me tonight. And it is in full swing, which means it's time to dominate your draft. And there's no better way to start than our Stokastic Fantasy Football and Best Ball YouTube channels. Click below to subscribe to those channels and turn on notifications for daily videos from our team of fantasy football experts to give you the edge you need when drafting this season. As I'm going to be checking out all those videos here over the next 2 hours because I got to kind of figure out who I want to draft. I know the NFC South really well. I can say NFC South, but when it comes to wrestling, I definitely need some help when it comes to there because I can be kind of on a one-track mindset once this week starts in terms of I know what's going on with the Buccaneers, but wrestling may need a little bit of help there. So you got to check out all the fantasy football coverage we have here at Stokastic.com. Sean goes, Logano thought, does he rack up enough dominator points or does he get passed fast?
I'm not sure how fast it's going to be. Obviously, there's a chance after the competition caution on lap 25, but I'm not expecting him to have the best car today. He wasn't that impressive in practice, just put on a really hot lap in qualifying. I don't think he's going to be terrible or anything, but I do think at some point we're going to see some of the Toyotas or Kyle Larson be passing him and leading some laps. So.
I see Mike over there in chat who's producing the show here today. He's got his Jalen Hurts blinders on. I think you can tell he's an Eagles fan. What lap does Byron punt Logano?
Well, if I knew that, I would love to know. I guess only William Byron knows that if that was even going to happen. I'm not expecting that out of Byron, but if he's going to, you might as well do it lap 1 and just get it over with and take the lead.
Best cash dominators besides Truex and Larson.
I mean, that's really the only guys I'd get to in cash as far as the dominators. But if I had to go with other guys, I would probably go with Ross as my next option. And then Logano if you're looking for a lap leader early.
How much Suarez is too much?
It's one of those situations where if you wanted to lock a driver, this is one of the best times to do it, starting dead last when they actually have a fast car. For me, I'm at 60-ish%. Just because there's so many other good plays in the 8K range, I'm not going to go too crazy.
Yeah. Let's see here. Mention some other questions here. What's the lowest price driver you would roster? Is it Cole Custer?
I'll get to Todd Gillen as my lowest. I'm not going to feel great about it. Custer's the preferred guy, but Gillen's the lowest I would get.
Any drivers you want to pair together in a lineup?
Not specifically, but I did think Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin had decent correlation just because of the JGR connection, and also you could throw in Truex, but I'm not really team building today or anything.
Mm-hmm. Baldy, I'll say, Michael Pittman Jr. Here's the weird thing is I literally watched his dad play here in Tampa. That's when I know I'm getting old. That's when I know, I start to realize oh man, there are guys that, I saw play here in Tampa when I first started with the team. And now I'm seeing their kids in the league. Yeah. Getting old, Chris. I'm getting old.
I'm fortunately not quite there yet at that point.
You'll get here, bro. Don't worry. You will get here.
I'm sure.
Is there a driver that maybe we haven't talked much about that we should be?
Oh man, I don't think we've really talked about. I don't think Eric Jones has been really talked about too much, but I mean, if you're looking at the odds for him, it's plus 5,000, which is better than a lot of the guys he's priced around. But he's had speed in practice, good at track type like this, and I think a lot of people are just so they're going to be all on Truex, Logano. The 10K range is loaded, 8K range is loaded. That 7K range, like a couple of people have talked about, it's kind of hard to get to. So I don't mind taking a couple of stabs at making a point to get Eric Jones in a lineup or two.
Andrew brings up the point. He says, is Hamlin the pivot off Larson?
Yeah, I mean, in the lineup side, I don't have Larson, and Hamlin gets kind of filtered in there. Pretty similar plays. I think Larson's got a better car, but Hamlin's great at Darlington and has equal upside, but similar upside.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at over the tools and data we have over at Stokastic.com, is when you look at comparing Larson and Hamilton, obviously you're getting a ownership play there in Hamlin, getting roughly 15% less ownership. Obviously we're projecting Larson a little bit better chance to be a dominator and about 8% chance more of being a top 6. But it's one of these things of like when I'm looking at saying, okay, Larson's going to be a popular player today,
right.
And if you're playing in tournaments and you need to get different than the field, that it would be one way to get different.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, it's all about the ownership up top, and with Larson going to be looking to be very high on play today. I mean, when you have a guy that's in a very similar spot, that's going to be much lower owned. You just have to get exposure to that for sure.
Next up says, is Austin doing a good GPP play to get off of Daniel Suarez?
I mean, it's definitely a pivot, but I don't think it's a good pivot personally. I'd rather get to a Bowman over an Austin Dillon. I think Bowman's going to have more speed, but Daniel Suarez is such a good play today with the competition caution bailing him out. Honestly, should have a top 15-ish car today, and it's going to bring in a lot of fantasy points at a pretty low price point.
We've talked about that 7K range, and you've talked about Eric Jones is the play there in the 7K range. Who would be the second best 7K range play?
For me, it's tough. I mean, checking my exposure here, it's going to either be Ty Gibbs or Bubba Wallace, but I think I have more Bubba Wallace as of right now. I like the long run speed that he had in practice, and I'm not expecting a huge day out of him, but starting an 8th, he could hold his track position and be kind of a guy that just hangs around the top 10 all day, maybe picks up a few fast laps here and there.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you look in that 7K range, outside of Eric Jones, for the most part, a majority of those guys are not getting any ownership.
Yeah, and it's kind of what I alluded to. A roster construction really doesn't dictate you that way. I mean, I kind of had to make it a point to make Eric Jones in there. It kind of changed the way my build looked. But I mean, that's the way builds are this week. The 7K range just kind of gets overlooked because you're top heavy with DOMs, and you're not really getting to the mid range where you have to get you have to go to the cheap range to pair them up with the DOMs.
You're gonna love this question.
Oh boy.
5,400 left on DraftKings. Who is the safest punt play? So we are talking LaJoy, Gillen, Yelly, McLeod, or Ware.
Oh, man, I can't call any of these guys safe. If I had to pick, though, I'm probably getting the Todd Gilliland, unfortunately, but that's a very nasty question.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those questions that I would say is there somebody you could swap out of your lineup that maybe could you find $100 more to get to a Cole Custer?
Yeah, I think if it's not at the cost of your favorite dominator, because if you have a favorite dominator,
yeah,
you should be able to make up those points. I mean, we're talking about maybe like a 5 to 10 point difference as a cheap guy. So if your dom ends up scoring 100, but the guy you pivoted to ends up scoring 40, was not worth that pivot. But if it's a more of a mid-range guy, that's where I'd probably be more fine with that.
I mean, the thing is, if you're living down in that range, your hope has just got to be that you just have some high salary drivers who run into tire problems or have some type of mechanical or wreck out. I mean, that's got to be the hope if you're living down here in this range.
Yeah, for the most part. And you have to nail your dominators. Like if you have these cheap drivers, you have to make sure you nail your doms. You have to nail pretty much everything else and just hope they avoid wrecks.
Cody goes, what do you gentlemen think about Cindric as a early dominator pivot?
I can't see Cindric dominating. I know he was fast in practice, but for him just to straight out beat guys like Bush, Larson, I don't see it happening.
Let's see here. How much is too much Cole Custer?
I'm in the 30s today as far as ownership is concerned. It's just, look, I need to fit those dominators in. So I'm throwing in a cheap guy, and he's the one I unfortunately trust the most down low.
Jake brings up this point about a dominator group of Hamlin, Reddick, and Bell. Now, what I would say I would like about that dominator group is you're getting away from some ownership from the guys that we are projecting as dominators.
Yeah, I mean, Hamlin and Reddick are those two guys up top that really aren't getting as much ownership, but I mean, they have really good upside too. They're good tracks for both of these guys, and they showed speed in practice, so I'm okay with that.
DraftKings single entry GPP, Kevin Harvick and Burton, or Bell and Custer.
Ooh. Oh, I think I'm going to have to go with the Harvick route. I mean, unless Bell is your main dominator in that lineup, but if you already have a couple of doms, I'm going to go with the Harvick side.
My initial thought was kind of thinking about going with the Cole Custer over Harrison Burton and thinking that if Bell could dominate and say you only have one other dominator in your lineup, I guess it would ultimately depend on how many dominators do you have in that lineup currently?
Yeah, because if you already have guys like Larson and you already have, say, Lozano, for example, I think Harvick's the better fit for that build.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Of course, we got just about 30 minutes away here to get those lineups in before lock hits, which, well, I got to get my CSVs in before make sure to fill all my lineups in here because, yeah, you hate when you have that feeling of when you forget to put that CSV in. It's happened.
Oh,
or you put the wrong CSV in. That's happened too.
You know, I actually missed the first CSV of the season during the Clash to start the year. I was like, that's not a good way to start this.
No, that's not a good way to start the season. But of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here for NASCAR Live Before Lock Show. If you could smash that thumbs up button, really would appreciate that. Of course, subscribe to the channel because we got a lot of great programming coming for you all week long to get you ready for week 1 of the NFL season. So love to see those winning lineups. Tweet us at us after the races are over. Love to see that. And we appreciate everyone tuning in, and hopefully everyone has a great Sunday evening. And we'll talk to you next time here on Stokastic.com.